Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. So, I went to the library and they had like six more volumes of Again. So, I just want to make a point about if you're a library reader. If you're a library reader, and you read something you really, really like, you absolutely should figure out if there's a suggestion box or like a website page where it's like, tell us about the books, right? And then give them feedback. So, I'm not saying correlation is causation. I'm just saying there is a 100% correlation between me filling out one of those suggestion boxes and saying what a great manga this is, and tons more of those volumes showing up in the library for free. Oh my gosh! That's a pretty strong correlation. So, the before I do a review, I usually kind of like pre-think out the review. Actually, the whole tone of this review changed as I was reading. So originally the plan was going to be I was just going to talk about libraries the whole time and show off like four of my absolute favorite series this year. And then I started, because the reason for that is if something is perfect and I love it, and in like volumes 1 through 5 I told you why I loved it, and then volume 6 is a continuation of that, I've kind of said everything I need to say. But again, volume 6 was so good, like all the synapses started firing, like every page. It's like the opposite of cringe, where I'm stopping and I'm like in disbelief of how good this is, and I'm laughing so hard and I'm thinking, wow, I get like more entertainment out of one page of Again than out of whole Marvel or DC books. Even like some of the pretty good Marvel or DC books. Again's just in its own category. And actually, something I wanted to say now that I've read volume 6 is Again has gone from a perfect manga series beyond a perfect manga series. It is now on like my very short list of all-time greatest comic books. Everyone should read this. Like the list is really short. So I've got like Bone by Jeff Smith, Mouse by Art Spiegelman, and what would the third one be? Oh yeah, From Far Away by Kyoko Hikawa, right? And now Again. And really, that's it. Like, there are other books I could put on the short list, but I'd have to debate about whether they belong on the list or not. And my definition of the short list is the books I absolutely would buy and reread again and recommend to people without even like thinking twice about it. The only thing about Again is like it's got older teen, like, it talks about like high schoolers having sex, and there's some crass comments. So it's for older teens, but I'm going to argue that the moral message of Again is, I think, deeply Christian, deeply profound, and deeply meaningful for our time. So the original theme was going to be these four books and like a really quick review of all of them. Let me just say about libraries real quick. If you've been paying attention, you might notice I've gotten stuck on C's because I'm OCD and I start with A, and then I get to C and there's like 40 volumes of Case Closed. They're all so great, but also there's 40 volumes of them. So one interesting point is I haven't even gotten through the C's yet, and I found 4 or 5 perfect manga series that I absolutely love and are just like I'd want to read them over and over and over again, right? So get to your library and you're going to find all kinds of great stuff for free. I didn't have to spend my paycheck on a whole bunch of floppy issues just to find one or two pretty okay ones. All right, so now that I've done my bit of service, encourage, hey kids, go to your local library. All right, so let's talk about Again. So what this sparked for me as I was reading it is I've been thinking a lot about what I call the death of anti-SJW YouTube. It's not that it's died, it's just that it's carrying along, and I don't think it's going to be growing anymore. I'm actually expecting YouTube to just keep cracking down on all kinds of people, regardless of even whether it's political or not. If you just like aren't the what is it, the Late Show with Stephen Colbert or whatever, I don't think YouTube wants to cater to you anymore. Independent people built the platform. Now they want to be another network TV news station. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so I think one of the problems with anti-SJW YouTube is it's gotten stuck in a rut where it's not enough just to point out the flaws in something. You have to point out a positive counterexample. So it's not enough for me to whine about SJW books and why I hate them, 30 videos a day. I've got to point you in the direction of some good things that are actually a positive counterpoint to what I'm disliking in the postmodern books. Related to that, I've been rereading Tolkien and rereading C.S. Lewis, and that's always kind of like a nice reminder that, oh, I'm not insane. I'm not the only one who's worried about this stuff. Where both of them in their own way, I think, worried about people deconstructing everything. And the quip from Tolkien was, "He who breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom." So if you break something to figure out how it works and then you put it back together, that's really healthy. That's really cool. That's you learning how the thing works and how to build it and maybe even make it better. But if all you do is you break the thing and you don't put anything back together, that's purely destructive. You're not getting any benefit out of the analysis process if you're not using it to build your own thing. So the deconstructionist movement in academia has kind of hyper-fixated on, let's read all these fairy tales and talk about how they create patriarchy, right? So they're all deconstructing these fairy tales, but they don't have something positive to replace that with. They don't have a good, meaningful story to give you as a replacement for what they think is the bad, awful, terrible story. And the result is that we get they just discourage people from creating at all. They kind of kill that creative spirit, or people try to create something, but they've basically lost the worldview you need to create a beautiful story. You can't make a good, morally subjectivist story because, I'm just not interested in a guy who murders babies and he's supposed to be a sympathetic character, right? And he just says, well, it's just subjective. It's just how I feel. Like there needs to be a worldview for a story to connect with anyone, and you don't have to be a Christian to adopt that worldview, but you need some kind of framework to say this is right, this is wrong, this is how you ought to live. So related to that is kind of, like most people, when I'm reading manga, I'm always wondering, is Western civilization doomed? Are we all going to stop having babies? And is society going to collapse into chaos, civil war, and not enough babies to pay off Social Security debt? Right? Like a normal person, I think about that. So one of the things leading to that is kind of like the MGTOW incel problem. And if you think about how blue check marks talk about it, or how feminist professors talk about it, they basically don't talk about the problem at all. They will make fun of people on the internet and call them incels as their go-to insult. But I haven't seen any blue check marks or any feminists speak meaningfully on what does the popularity of incel meme culture mean for us? Like, how are we going to help these young men? How are we going to encourage these young men to not be incels, right? And if you don't think about that problem, we're just building up trouble. And it's scary because, there's obviously like tons of young men who feel hopeless, who feel alone, who feel like they have no chance of getting anywhere in life. And even some people on the left, people who are opposite me on the political spectrum, are noticing this problem, and they're writing articles like, why is Jordan Peterson the only person who's speaking to these young men, where they're kind of finally starting to realize, hey, wait a second, it's not enough for us to just yell at our political opponents if there are these deep-seated, really dangerous problems building up for our culture. We've actually got to figure out how to speak to young men, if for no other reason than our own political benefit. Now, I don't think it's enough to just worry about whether something's politically, good optics for you. If you're worried about young men, you've got to be worried about young men. You've got to talk to them. You've got to exhort them to live a meaningful life, to have hope, to not despair. So basically, you can take or leave the entire Western American academic system. They're just not dealing with these kind of problems. Yet, the manga industry, this goofy high school comic, is dealing with this problem actually in a very interesting way. So this is basically like a Hey Incels book. And then it exhorts incels with a really beautiful story that, if you dumb down incel, like you're talked to, be determined, right? That's not enough. It's not enough to tell someone who feels depressed, don't be depressed, right? But if you take a hopeful message and you put it in the context of a story, it's sort of like you say something more meaningful than a bumper sticker. But if I were to sum it down to a bumper sticker, this is basically a pep talk for incels, but it's more complicated than just the two-word bumper sticker version of that. So observation number 1, Mitsuru Kobo is a female mangaka. She's a consummate professional. She loves her craft. This is basically the 3rd volume of manga that's all about one baseball game, and every little action in the baseball game feels exciting. You feel like the impact of every throw and strike and out, and She's then making you think about how the baseball game and the cheerleading squad and the Oendan, the Japanese cultural cheerleading squad, all kind of relate to one another, and they all relate to the problem of life. It's a pretty complicated plot, so I would say you probably should start at volume 1 and read all of it. She also does a good job of like catching you up if you're behind, but I think this is doing such a good job building really deep themes. I think you need to see the whole picture from beginning to end. But another good thing about it is it's not doing sort of the stereotypical like romantic triangle. Oh, my love is unrequited. My love will be unrequited for 20 volumes, and then right at the end I will confess my love. No, she actually like has someone confess her love in this volume, which means she's actually building the themes in kind of a fresh way. So it also kind of illustrates how the manga industry pays attention to its fans, and they don't like how love triangles get dragged on for 20 years. So they say, okay, let's update and let's fix that, and let's not have the love triangle drag on for 30 years. Wow, this is such a good book. All right, jumping ahead. All right, okay, so this is the page I marked because they're actually developing a romance. The romances themselves are... she's also good at like developing her secondary cast. So there's like the two main characters who have these, character flaws and these also positive character attributes, and these compete with each other. They kind of each push each other, right? So that's very interesting. And then all of her secondary characters also have this three-dimensionality to them. Like, okay, maybe like in contrast to Naruto. So I like Naruto, but maybe one of the problems of Naruto is a lot of the fights could be dumbed down to be super determined Naruto, and like the most important plot of Naruto is obviously Naruto and Sasuke. And tragically, a lot of the secondary characters who are kind of interesting get short shrift, and you don't find out that much about them. You kind of want to know more about them because they're interesting, but they're just not as important to the story as Naruto. In contrast, again, all the characters feel like they matter. All the characters are interesting. All of them are kind of collaboratively coming together to make this bigger picture of high school and life itself. It's almost like Mitsuru Kubo wants to give high schoolers a pep talk to say, "Yep, high school's hell, but I've got a hell of a story for you about high school." And for people who like had a rough time in high school, look back on high school, maybe have some regrets, give them a pep talk and not let like the bad stuff in your past doom you as you move forward. So the romance is actually advancing nicely. Jumping ahead, here's like one of these cool incel moments. So Imamura, he's magically found himself transported back in time. In his original life, he was a loner, deeply antisocial incel, looked like a future school shooter kind of guy. So now that he's got a chance to live his life over again, he wants to become social. He wants to not be bored. And what he finds is, for him to be able to do that, he kind of has to make some sacrifices. He has to sacrifice his lone wolf, tough guy image and allow himself to put himself out there a little bit, to be embarrassed, because relationships are dangerous. Relationships take something out of you, but they're ultimately worth it because in the long run, relationships give you something too. They give you an understanding of your fellow human beings. So elementary school, middle school, he's judged by girls for his physical appearance. They just automatically assume he's bad news. And he concludes, "Women are scary. I'll probably go the rest of my life and die having never opened my heart to a girl." Whoa! So, Mitsuru Kubo respects and sympathizes with young men so much that, like, I felt that in my gut. Women are scary. I don't think most young, like especially like very young women who are immature and they haven't learned much about men yet, I don't think they know how much women absolutely terrify young men. And she's tapping into, like, man, that was like, I got flashback to, like awkward first year of high school when I'm a nerd trying to talk to the girl I like for the first time. And she's able to do that because she's sympathetic, because she cares about people. She cares about young men, and she doesn't just see young men as like a political opponent to defeat. Now, Imamura's story is related to Shibata, the cool high school pitcher's story. And he also is having this problem where the fans are cheering for him, but he doesn't hear them. He hears, "You suck," or "He stole your girl." "Suzuki's a virgin for life." And another neat thing about this is kind of like underscoring the importance of like physical activity, baseball, athleticism. where I think a lot of nerds say, oh, that's just for jocks. Jocks says stupid, but we're smart and we like nerdy things. No, like sports is really cool. Sports is like a metaphor for life. Sports teaches you like really important lessons. Like you don't have to learn these lessons from sports. Like I did drama, I did speech, right? So there was a similar culture of like the coach, teaching you and kind of exhorting you to give it your all, that kind of a thing. But the reason, sports or chess club or drama team, the reason those things are important is you're interacting with your peers and you are learning to compete and to deal with failure. So, as the Owen Don is having like their huge cheering and trying to like encourage the team to do well, he's having like, it's this literal thing where like, especially in baseball, like players will have something wrong in their head. It's why baseball is a game of streaks. Like they'll feel like a loser, therefore they keep sucking, and they just kind of like have to work through it almost. And then boom, suddenly they'll be on fire and striking out all the batters or hitting all the home runs. And this is then connected to life in a really deep and meaningful way. Basically, it's saying it's explaining why nihilism is bad to young people, without hamming it down to like just a patchy try being happy, try doing your best. It really, by showing characters grappling with nihilism, grappling with depression, grappling with just the feeling that it's hopeless and they can't go on and it's no use. It then shows why, in spite of that, you have to keep enduring, you have to keep having hope, because that hope itself is what gets you to the point where you can finally start to get over that feeling of depression, while at the same time acknowledging that things don't just magically start working out for you right away. You're still going to have these relationship problems, you're still going to have these life problems, but it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful book. All right, 16 minutes, that's good. The book is Mitsuru Kubo's again. I'm going to buy it. Everyone should read it. One of the top comics of all time. This is literature. I'm number one Marmaduke fan. Go to your libraries, kids, and tell your library what the good books are so they order more of them. Love ya. Catch you later.